Yeah, this is a Kennedy siding caribou herd that McLeod Lake and the province take care of. They're a federal species at risk, so their numbers are declining. There is a caribou herd in BC that is actually extirpated now, so we want to help and support and do what we can for caribou recovery and retention. Indigenous communities, we think ahead, we think about the next 7 generations, and we definitely want them to experience the wildlife around us like our ancestors always have.
Caribou live throughout Canada, so their status is different in different parts of the country. They have different life history, different population dynamics, numbers going up and down. But in British Columbia, especially central and southern British Columbia, numbers have been slowly declining for decades. And many small groups have been extirpated, so they no longer live in many places. Over the say 100 years, they no longer live in the low elevations. They've been isolated on the mountaintops, so they're considered mountain type animals now, but they used to live at all elevations. And so their range has been reduced, and in fact, they no longer live in some places. And where there's still caribou, most of those caribou populations are still declining.
A long time ago, like during the 60s, my dad used to exist on these animals. Because they were probably a little bit more plentiful at that time. And since that time, the animals have been declining more and more. Some say that it could be the wolves that are always hunting them.
Indigenous communities have been calling for wolf calls for years. We've been asking the government to implement wolf calls. We've said that this technique will work, and finally they've implemented it in 2020, and it's working. And it's having a positive impact, so I think that comes to show that Indigenous knowledge is going to help support these caribou populations and recover them and bring them back.
One of the ways that McLeod Lake is helping through is to run this program by feeding them, because especially this time of year, you don't get much lichen left on the ground. So in order for them to keep breeding and to keep their stock alive, like they have to keep feeding them. Yeah, and it's really important to our people.
That's why every once in a while you see them pawing, is that they're trying to get to the lichen so they can eat that lichen. Lichen comes in 2 different forms. They can be the ones that grow on the ground or the ones that grow on the trees.
Yeah, so my project is focusing on the how and why of supplemental feeding. So we know that supplemental feeding seems to be having a beneficial effect on this caribou population. So we want to know how and why it's doing that. So my broad question is, how is it affecting population growth rate? So I'm looking at either, is it affecting the number of females who get pregnant every year, or is it affecting the survival of the calves who are born? It's incredibly important to me. I think we hear a lot about caribou in the media, and we don't really have a good understanding unless we come out and see them for ourselves. I certainly know when I was in college in the Lower Mainland, we heard all about the wolf call, but none of us had ever actually seen a caribou before. So being hands-on with conservation, I think, has given me a really new perspective on understanding the threats and the realities of their management. And I also feel really good about being involved in the conservation of an endangered species. This is something really tangible that I can feel. I can feel that I'm having an effect. And it's just great to be out here and being able to make a connection with my study species.
And in our language, we call them matzi. Matzi, yeah, that's matzi.
I started getting back into my language and stuff, and I always try to use my language to tell their body parts and stuff like that. And this part right here, that the big fur that you see, we call that in our language, we call it muyeda. Yeah, that means it's sort of like a snuff box, that's what we call it.
Yeah, and my grandparents, they talk about it quite a bit. They used to go up mountain and just to go for caribou certain times of the year, that it's usually in August, and They use it for meat. They make dry meat and stuff like that.
I've learned quite a bit just that speaking with the researchers that are here and stuff that I've never even knew about lichen, about their antlers, about their rutting, about everything. And I've only been here one day and I'm already a fan of caribou, and I'm just, what better way to learn and be right here on the land right now at this moment.
From the caribou side, they can learn what can be used, how the caribou can be used, like, you know, for food or for like clothing. And then the other side of the world, they can probably just look at how they can survive in this harsh environment.
One of the things that really drew me to this project was the fact that I was going to be able to work closely with local communities and local Indigenous peoples. And that's something that's really important to me, is having like a holistic and community-minded approach to research. So knowing that this is going to have a good effect for the local community is really important to me.
They're wonderful animals. They are quite interesting and do lots of different things.
So that made it quite important to us to actually, if they looked after us way back then, now I guess it's our turn to take care of them. And we always try to help out in our way to increase the herds.
I like to see the program to continue and help them to survive, because I think it's important that we have not only caribou, we need moose, we need everything. Because in my trap line, I know there's hardly anything left now because it's so locked out because of all the spruce bugs that's been through that area.
The objective of caribou recovery is large, naturally self-sustaining populations. And in this video, I hope will reach even more people about what we're doing here.
When we work together, we will create a better future for our animals, the wildlife, and mostly our children. You know, we want them to practice their traditions for generations. I want my children to hunt ungulates. I want my grandchildren to hunt ungulates, and I want the next 5 generations after that to be able to come out in the land and practice their tradition and go hunting.